Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rogue Sun podcast. This is a show about the Rogue Sun comic book series by Ryan Parrott and Abel. I'm your host, Bash, and I'm joined by my friends and my fellow hosts, Addie, Charlie, and Matt. Today, we've got a very, very special guest. You may know him from television. You may know him as the writer of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Dead Day, and writer and co-creator of Rogue Sun, as well as the incredible upcoming The Infernals, Ryan Parrott. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, man. That opening logo, every time I see it, I'm like, what? It's amazing.
Super slick.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool. Bravo to ever do that. Yeah, I'm shocked every time I see that too. Good job.
Thank you for having me on here, man. All the guys, I really appreciate it.
Of course, we always look forward to it.
We've wanted to do this for a while, yeah, and it's perfect timing with the end of the arc and everything. We haven't even recorded the review yet because we just got to reading it and everything. But I gotta say, guys, we got a preview. Thanks to Ryan, of course, we got a preview of The Infernals, which is by Ryan Parrott, Noah Gardner, John Pearson, and Hassan Otsman Ahau. And I got to say, it's really good. Obviously, there's going to be no spoilers because the book doesn't come out until next week, which is on Valentine's Day, right?
Yep.
So I just want to say, Ryan, first of all, why does every one of your series begin with someone dying? Is that like the ultimate hook? And I say that with admiration. Like, I love it, but man, it's brutal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's just stakes, I guess, right? You gotta make sure no one's safe from the very beginning. But yeah, I don't. Does someone die in the first 2 minutes?
Well, someone's dying, I guess we'll say.
Oh, dying. Right? Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
someone's dying. Yeah.
All right, so wait, let's talk about this. Guys, if you haven't already heard about The Infernals, we'll pull it up here in a second. It's coming out, like we said, Valentine's Day. And as you can see, the series is about Abraham Abe Morgenstern, the son of Satan, has 1 month to live. Before he dies, he must decide which of his 3 wayward children, volatile narcissist Nero, conflicted field operative Jackal, or troubled schoolgirl B, will inherit his shadowy empire. But will Abe ever be able to truly cede control of the apocalypse? Or does the Antichrist have something else up his sleeve? I just want to say, where did this idea come from? Because obviously we can see, you mentioned there are parts of inspiration from things like Succession, and which is amazing, by the way. So where does this come from?
Well, probably more issues with my dad. I love writing stories about horrible fathers and their terrible children. No, I'm kidding. My dad's awesome. So Dad, when you watch this, I love you. It's about my mother. No, I'm kidding. The idea came from so Noah Gardner and I have been friends for 10 years. He used to work at Bad Robot with me when I worked for JJ. He was Brian Burke's assistant. So whenever we had dead days at the company, he would throw out ideas and we would start talking about comics and movies and TVs, and so we've just known each other forever. And he's actually done a lot of movie and feature work just behind the scenes. A lot of the stuff hasn't been made, but he's got a pretty prolific career. If I gave you a list of the stuff he's actually worked on, you guys would not believe it. You would not want to talk to me. You would have Noah on here. But he was pitching me. After I'd done comics for a really long time, he was like, "Hey, I would love to do a comic with you." And I was like, "Absolutely, man. That'd be really fun. You're a fantastic writer. So let's start talking." And he sent me idea after idea after idea, and some of them were really good, and some of them were just not quite comics, but it was a thing where you couldn't quite find the right thing. So I remember he sent probably 20 ideas, and then I remember he sent me the last one, which was he was like, "Hey, I got this one idea. It's about the devil, the Antichrist is dying, and he has to decide whether or not to one of his 3 kids to take over." And I was like, "Where the hell's that been? That's amazing. We should totally make that." And so he sent that to me, and then because I immediately knew, okay, because I think that the part that I really liked about it, and I've said this before, but I think it's really cool, is I love the idea of meeting the Antichrist later in life. You've seen The Omen, you've seen Rosemary's Baby, you've seen all those stories, and they're always about evil kids or babies or whatever. You always see the Antichrist at a very young age. And I love the idea that this is he's in his 70s. He's obviously, the way the world is, he's doing a pretty good job. And so the idea that all of a sudden he would get cancer, and well, who gives you cancer? Well, obviously my dad is very unhappy with me for some reason, and so now I'm going to meet my father for the first time. I've never met my dad. Everybody else has, but I haven't. And now I'm going to go away and I have to decide who I'm going to leave. I love the idea of sort of the cycles of sort of parenting, like the idea that his dad's sort of an absentee father. I mean, obviously, I've got very strong themes in my writing. I'm just ripping off myself at this point. But like his dad's an absentee father who he doesn't really like, and now he's been kind of a terrible father to his children, and now he sort of has to hand off the baton, and he doesn't know who to do that to. And I just thought there's a lot of, and I automatically saw the stuff with the kids, and the idea of the other thing we really liked was like we get to sort of apply sort of this weird like corporate mythology, the Succession element, like apply all the crazy stuff you saw in Succession to religion and organized religion, and that's what we get to do. Like we get to do all of the weird like what's the hierarchy of a company is the same as the hierarchy in heaven or in hell and all this. There's a part in one of the second episodes or second issues where a character is trying to reach the devil, so they do a human sacrifice, and it's like a blood oath. They're like cutting him open, and then they do it, and they only get the devil's secretary. It's like, hey, so excited about this sacrifice. I don't have him right now, but if you give me all the information, I will tell you everything. And like, it's just the idea of like using the corporate stuff and all the stuff. So it's like a lot of fun. Like it's not a comedy, but like we definitely have some like it's a weird tonal show, like comic. Like it's all over the place. If you guys read it, like it's kind of dark and kind of funny and kind of weird and gets very twisted. And then kind of like it's not like that's what we liked about it. It had all these different genres that we could tap into.
Yeah, it's like mature but also crass at the same time. It's a really good mixture. I feel like Preacher fans would like this, and this is a good time to say like this is the edgiest book. Like the Massiveverse, they say fuck sometimes. This book, I feel like after issue 1, we've already kind of like passed the bar of like gratuity, and I like it. Like I think it was really clever in the way that you implemented it. And
this book's for adults. It's not for kids. I'm just like straight up, not for kids.
We set stuff on fire that should never be set on fire in the first issue.
Make a good argument for tampons being in public bathrooms. I'll say that. But, no, that was good. Like I feel like as I was reading it, I could picture it being like a pilot, being on like HBO or like a Netflix. The way it's designed and the layout, like the art is crazy. I don't know. I feel like this art team is really underrated as well. Like this was really impressive stuff. How'd you figure out on this team?
John is somebody that I've known for or like watched for a long time and read. I remember when Noah was like, we were talking about artists, and he was like, "What do you think about John J. Pearson?" I was like, "I mean, yeah, he's awesome. He's not gonna do it." Like that was my reaction. I was like, "He's too busy. There's no way he's gonna want to do this." And so I was like, "You know what? Email him, see what happens." And then I got a forwarded email from Noah like 3 days later, and he's like, "Hey, he wants to do it." I'm like, "Make sure it's the right email. Make sure you didn't go to the wrong person." Or like, it was John Pearson, is it John J. Pearson? Because we got John D. Pearson doing this. We got some problems. But yeah, it was John, and he was like so gung ho on it. And like we've spoken about a little bit, he was like, "How did you not think I was gonna do this?" Like literally checks all the boxes of everything that I do. Like the weird. And what I think is amazing about John is we kind of wanted it to be like a Vertigo book. Like that was kind of the way that we talked to Eric Stevenson at Image about it, was like, let's go do sort of like an edgy sort of like, it's religious, but it's not like, it's not really making a comment on religion. It's making a comment on just sort of belief and sort of the supernatural and all that stuff. But when he said, when John turned in like the first batch of art, I was like, oh wow, like, okay. I've used the example a little bit. It's like there was a director that I loved growing up named Tarsem. He directed the movie The Cell, and he directed oh man, what else? Like The Fall and all these weird, visually amazing movies. And I always thought like what's so cool about that is I know you just like sort of hand or like a Tim Burton movie, like you hand the script over to them and they're going to turn it into something completely different. They're going to take it and they're going to run with it. And that's kind of what John does. Like we gave it to him, and like I don't really give him notes. Like he just kind of draws what he wants to draw, and he takes it, and the stylistic choices are a lot of him. And so like, but it's really fun. Like we're in good hands. He's really good and talented, and like I like it because I get to just get the pages, and I like get sort of like suss them out and interpret them the same way that the reader does. So he's just incredible. And Hassan's lettering. This is the book that I realized like, oh yeah, lettering really defines the tone of your book. Like, I don't think I ever quite appreciated how hard it is to letter and how effective the right lettering and the right choices can be to really establishing, it's weird. Letters, I think, are kind of like the music in a movie. You know what I mean? If it's off, it's really off, but if it's on, it can just elevate it. And I feel like that's what lettering does in a comic. It fills in that space that since you don't have music, it sort of fits in the vibe and the tone.
No, definitely. You could see the lettering from the first page, right? Like, I don't want to spoil it, but from the first page, you could tell like the lettering is right there in your face. It draws you in right away. But
you can hear it, right? Like when you read that first panel, you can hear exactly what that person's going through. And I'm like, I wouldn't know how to do that. Like I was just like, man, that's incredible.
No, Hassan's been great in every book he does. But as for me personally, I got hooked on the book literally on the second page. Like after that first page, I saw the second page. I was like, all right, I'm going through with this. So I guess my question is, are we going to get a chance to explore the rest of the family, not just necessarily Abe and his kids moving forward?
Well, the book's predominantly the Morgensterns. It's Abe and his 3 children, but each issue is going to be each issue is told from the perspective of a different child. So, like the second issue, I think is Nero, and the third issue is Jackal, and so you get internal monologues and all those characters. So you'll get a lot more depth on who those all are, and you'll meet their extended family as well, because obviously Abe's been married more than one time. And so there's a lot of that stuff. But yeah, like I think you get it's all sort of centered around the family and sort of the tangential characters. But what I like about it is we really get a sense of like, for instance, when you get to B in the 4th issue, one of the things that's really interesting, she's a very quiet character in the first few issues. She does chime in a little bit, but she's not sort of like the main, Nero talks a little more than she does. But what's really interesting is I think it sort of sets you up to think of her as a certain type of character. And then when we get to 4 and you understand why she is the way that she is, a very interesting perspective on the world that I don't think is expected. And that was the part that, like, that's the fun part of doing inner monologue. This is actually one of the first books that I've done with inner monologue in a long time, because with Rogue Sun, I don't really need an inner monologue for the most part, because, Dad's standing right there. So like, that is the inner monologue. And in Power Rangers, it was a giant ensemble. So you don't usually, you can do it every once in a while, but you don't consistently. It's not like a Batman book where that's like 90% of the book, right? So this is my first time really playing with that.
Yeah, that was great. And yeah, all the art, the character is super interesting. I noticed, like, first off, that's cool talking about the artist. Like, that was a super distinct thing. Like, he has a very different style from a lot of other just typical comic artists. And also, I don't think this is too much spoiling, but one of my favorite scenes, it was kind of someone's being pulled out of a dream and using the letters, kind of, they're being pulled out of the dream, but there's 2 letter boxes and they're kind of being pulled out of that. That was my favorite bit of that in the whole issue. That was incredible. But my question to you is, what was it like writing with a co-writer versus on Rogue Sun, kind of writing by yourself? And have you done that before? Are you familiar with that?
I have a little bit. This is my first time writing with Noah, and well, actually, that's not true. This is our first time writing a comic with Noah. Like, I've written a feature with Noah and some other small stuff, but this is my first time, like, sort of like, I'm not going to say playing co-pilot, but because this was Noah's idea to me, I've always sort of been a little subservient to him, and this has been like, okay, like, this was your idea. I want you to be the one sort of carrying the water. And that doesn't mean I don't chime in and change and stuff, and we break stuff, but like, I really do sort of let him guide it a little bit. And then so I have learned to let go of the wheel a little bit in a co-writing relationship. Like, the first co-writer that I really worked with was Mike Johnson on Star Trek. I worked on a lot of books with him, but since he was the guy who'd been writing Star Trek before me, he's going to be writing Star Trek after me. So once again, I was sort of like playing back. And then when I did with Power Rangers with Sin of Grace, that was the first. I was still pretty new to the game, and I don't think I gave him enough freedom to really use his voice, because he's such an accomplished and incredible writer, and I don't think I really gave him the chance to shine. But he never complained, and he was an amazing professional, and I'd work with him in a second, because I probably could learn a lot more if I wasn't so rigorous about it all. But I think I learned something from that value, because by the end of that run, I think we did like 12 issues together. By the end of that run, I realized, oh man, the books get way better when I don't dictate things and when I don't rework things. And if you get that freedom, you get a little bit more, you get different voices and different points of view, and the book tends to turn a little bit in ways you didn't expect. And so I've tried to apply that a little bit to this one, as being a little more hands off and letting Noah, decide and change things and be like, and be more trusting, I think, is the hardest part. It takes a little time to get there, but with him, he's so good that I'm just like, yeah, I'm good. It'll be fine.
That's great.
Nice.
That's great. How long have you been writing comics now?
10 years, I think, maybe
10 years?
longer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
great.
I think it was like 2009 when I got my first comic, maybe something like that. So yeah, that's
Okay.
longer than that's like 13
What
years.
was it? What was your first comic?
My first comic that I like, first printed comic book was Gates of Gotham #3 with Kyle.
Oh, I have that.
Oh, wow.
That's my first one. If
Up to the vault.
you have the floppy,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
they misspelled my name. They gave me like 3
Yeah.
T's. I was like,
Oh,
"You
that's-
did this really T."
Those
But, all right.
assholes.
3 T's is like going a little farther, but yeah, that one was crazy because like Kyle was writing like 3 miniseries, and then overnight he got Nightwing and Deathstroke, like the new 52s, and so he called me because I'd been helping him a bit to get to Gotham just on the side, like helping him break story, but not like really writing anything, but just like helping. And then he called me. I was at work, and he was like, "Hey man, so I have to double ship the last 2 issues, which means we have to do both. Can you come in and help me write 3, 4, and 5, like in like a month?" Like I was like, "All of them?" He's like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Sure." So I would work all day. I'd work from like 9 till 6, and then I'd drive over to his place, and we'd write from 7 till midnight every night for like 3 weeks, and we burned through those books so fast because they all had to ship by a certain day because the new 52 was launching the month after, and they didn't have any opportunity. So that was my first comic book stuff, and then because of that, I got those books, and then I brought them in, and JJ and had seen that I brought him in. I was super excited about it. He's like, "Oh, you would do comics?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you want to do some Star Trek?" And I was like a big Star Trek fan. I was like, "Yeah, that'd be amazing." And so he let me do Star Trek, and that's where it all kind of started. So
That's awesome.
Awesome.
I feel like you guys don't get enough credit because the real ones, like the real readers, they know that like Kyle, and at this point, even you can even say Ryan, because he was working on those issues, Gates of Gotham. Like they built out a lot of the important lore for like the Court of Owls in that shit, and the fucking DC hijacked it and put it in Scott Snyder shit. But like it really started there. I'm serious. And then like freaking Kyle came up with like I don't know if he came up with Talon, but he put Talon in the book and made it like more meaningful. And then DC was like, "Oh no, we're gonna make that guy a Batman character too."
Yeah.
So like if you read that book, you know that a lot of the Court of Owls, which is huge now, like everybody knows who the Court of Owls is, right? If you know the Court of Owls, you know like a lot of the early like Gotham lore where they established who the Court of Owls were and like who the different families were in the Gates of Gotham series. Like they did that, and that was such an underrated, such a good book. I highly recommend reading. Yeah, if you haven't read it.
I won't. I don't know how much of the Court of Owls stuff we did, but I do know that like the 5 families and like that the idea of who those all were, because that's in the Batman in the movie. That was the weirdest thing is I remember going to that movie and they start talking about the 5 families, and I was like, that was Kyle and I talking about. Man, that's crazy.
So cool.
And then they got
That's
Scott Snyder and Kyle got like a special thanks, and I was like, "Where's me, man? What the hell?"
Right there, and the 3 T's matching.
you
Like,
cool.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know you started on Batman too, and I just want to say real quick, your Harley on the red, white, and red or whatever it was
Black,
fantastic.
white, red,
yeah.
Great,
Actually, have
great
that
story.
like right there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Then
That was
you
so
did
much fun. I was shocked that they were going to let me do that, and I was like, "Really? I get to do a Gordon and Harley just sitting and talking?" They're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Holy crap!
awesome.
All right."
That's
So
some of the
thanks.
best stories, right? Just 2 people sitting down, just talking some shit, right? For sure.
Absolutely,
Love it.
yeah. And like they have so much. I was actually like looking. I was like, I don't think they've actually had a lot of interactions. Like they, as far as I know, they do. They've interacted, but like I was like, have they ever really sat and talked? And like,
Yeah,
the
not like
thing
that.
I loved about it was this idea that like they both have like they're both loved psychopaths. With his son and Joker, and I just thought that was the crux. I was like, they both know what it's like to love somebody that is obviously insane and incapable of being like fixed or helped, but like you can't stop loving them anyways, and what that feels like. And I just thought there was something, and also that's the girlfriend of the dude who put your daughter in a wheelchair. Like I just like, are you going to be able to ever look past that? And I thought that was the whole story for me, which I really liked.
That's
great.
great.
I really like the story of the Birds of a Feather as well, and the Titans Beast World Tour Star City. Yeah, I was really wondering like when is someone gonna do something with Red Canary again? Because usually
such a cool design. That her outfit is dope. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Such a good story. Yeah, and I feel like I kept begging like people at DCM just like put them together, like what I mean. And then you gave us the story, like here's Black Canary, Red Canary. Here's why, you know what I mean, like why they work together. Here's why Red Canary does what she does. I'm just like, man,
that's the only DC book I've ever pitched for was Birds of Prey. Like years ago. I mean, like 10 years ago when they were like just figuring out who they all were. and I pitched for that to take over the monthly, and that's like the only thing. And I was really excited because it was like I had some ideas what I want to do with Black Canary about her powers going crazy and like all the fun stuff about her because she's kind of like in that group. She's like the only one who has like real powers. Like all the other sort of birds of prey, at least depending on what membership you have at the moment. But like they're all kind of like normal, but then you've got one who's actually super powered. And I just thought there was something really cool about that makes her kind of the de facto leader. But what happens if those powers start to go crazy? And I was kind of excited about it. And then I didn't ultimately get the gig, but like, so it was kind of fun that I actually got to do a Black Canary story again. I was like, oh, good. That's nice.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Back to the Infernals. How long do you have planned for the series? And do you think it's going to be traditional like 6-issue arcs, or are you going to do something a little different?
Definitely I think the first actually only is 5 issues. Just because it fit well with like the 3 kids in the bookend. So we were like, okay, let's just do that. And also because John's art's just so detailed and good. It's just like, we want to give him as much time as possible. It's like, we're not going to try to rush that. But the idea is we mapped it out through the first arc and we've already planned out future stories. I think we're going to sort of see how it goes and how it sells and how things move, depending on when we'll do the second. Because we've also talked about potentially doing something a little bit different, a little crazy. So we've definitely mapped it out in sort of 5-issue arcs. But I don't know if they're going to be like continuous. I think it might be like a little bit of a break and then like a chapter 2 and do sort of like some jumps in time or whatever. Like just because I feel like there's like an opportunity to sort of do volumes that are more like, as opposed to like making it a monthly comic, it's more of like, these are sort of like, not like the Harry Potter novels, but like that way that, each one is sort of defined. So I think we're going to try something to do something like that.
Nice. Yeah. I just wanted to ask, so the first issue when I was reading, the credits inside the book, it said the art is by John Pearson and Lola Bonato. Did Lola do the colors, or is it like they did the art together? Or
so I think the way it works, I apologize, Lola, because I might be underestimating you. I think she's a flattener. I think she comes in and helps with the different layers and colors them out and flattens them and do some of that stuff. I don't know exactly the specifics that she does. She did one of our covers, or one of our, well, not one of our covers, one of our pinups that we did. But I think it's more just like trying to, John's got a lot of layers and a lot of stuff. I think she comes in and just sort of helps and highlights and colors and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a combination, because John does all the art. He does it all from the whole thing. Like it's just.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's a lot.
Whatever she did, keep doing it. Yeah, because it's good.
I feel bad.
See this.
I've been on podcasts with him, and he's like, everybody's like, "What are you working on, Ryan?" And I'm like rattling off like 3 or 4 books, and he's like, "What about you, John?" He's like, "Just this. This takes all my time."
But it looks like genuinely stunning. Yeah,
it's really so detailed too. There's it's pretty early in the book, but there's a page where like Abe is introducing himself, kind of who he is, and in the background is all just little pictures, little black and white pictures. Thank God I read this digital because I can actually zoom in and see everything.
I don't like to compare artists, but when I saw this, I was thinking like, dude, this guy, like one guy who I love, who I think is incredible and has a similar style as Martin Simmons. And I was thinking like John Pearson like is like Martin Simmons-esque, right? Is like
Martin did a cover for us.
I know, and I can't wait. I'm gonna try my hardest to get that. But what I noticed was like I was thinking like, dude, like I love Department of Truth, and this guy would be perfect for Department of Truth. And I looked him up like because I wanted to see what other books he's done, and I saw that he's done an issue of Department of Truth. I was like, okay, this makes so much sense, dude. No, the art is like genuinely like guys like genuinely in the top shelf tier of like some of the best looking books on shelves. I don't say that like lightly. I'm serious. Like this is really stunning. And I can't wait. I kept thinking like there's so much to absorb in each page. It's not like a rapid read. I would say, especially visually, like you can literally just sit there and look at every single page, and there's a lot going on. Even within the characters, there's a lot of little like idiosyncrasies, visually within how they look and everything. It's amazing. So I'm really excited for people to look at even the cover. Like when you look at it from far away, you don't notice, but when you look at like the reflection on the bottom on the cover, I'm just like, man, that is a killer like first issue cover. You know what I mean? Like, wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
I like to try to come up with the covers for the first issues because I'm always trying to think of them as sort of like teaser posters. Like how can you sum up the whole thing in hopefully an image? Like my favorite one's the Dead Day cover, the first one, which is like the gate and you have these zombies kind of walking forward, but there's all these pictures on the thing, which is like Dead Day drink specials and like like kids art and like finding your loved ones, call 555 dead, and all this weird stuff. And like it gives you that thing. If you look at it, you're like, what is this thing? Like it's like this isn't a normal zombie story. And so with this one, I was like, we should have a boardroom because there's a corporate drama, and we should have them. And then on the reflection of the boardroom table, we should have the reflection of the demons. And then you get it. Hopefully, you get the sense of that's what the show is. It's sort of kind of like one of the things I like trying to do in the book is sort of subverting some of the iconic religious iconography you have. Like you have in like there's a thing, not a spoiler, but there's sort of like the anti-nativity, as obviously is in the book, and then I like the idea of sort of that opening image being a little bit like the Last Supper, where you have everybody kind of in front of the table, kind of thing. So we've been trying to keep doing stuff like that, just sort of take the religious iconography that you know and flip it. But the thing I will say, the one thing I think that I want to give John credit for, like I think when we were first imagining this book, we were imagining it in sort of a traditional sort of like Western religious kind of thing, and John has taken like he has really given more of a worldview and a more of a like a polytheistic approach to it, which I think is a much cooler way. Like if you go to like in the last few pages, there's a scene that I looked at for hours just because there's so many weird little details that you can find. And he does stuff. He really does so much research and really sort of like pushes the envelope on just trying to give it like different visual style and give it visual and make sure there's like you said something earlier, like I think the book slows you down because the art's good. Like you read it slower because you're like, well, wait a minute, I want to look at this. And I think that's any artist that can make you do that is amazing, because that just
no, seriously, it reminds me of like even when I'm reading like the new Universal Monsters Dracula with like James Tynion and Martin Simmons. Like it's a quick read, but when like the pages literally suck you in because there's so many little details. And it's like even in one of these pages, like Ryan was saying, there's like no spoiler, but in the background there's like a lot of religious iconography, and you could literally, I spent like so long looking at all the little things in the background because I was like, this is so cool. Like, you know what I mean? So it really like you can tell immediately. It's one of those things where not only you could tell that like the artist is putting a lot of time and effort into it, but you could tell they take pride in it as well. Like you can tell the person's proud of this work because it's fucking amazing. Like it really is. So can't wait for that, guys. Infernals, February 14th. Do you guys have any other Infernals questions before we start? We head over to the Rogue Sun.
How much we just drop with the soundtrack. We had a soundtrack to play in reverse and hear the demonic messages and stuff.
I have one before we go completely into Rogue Sun, but can kind of transition us into the massiveverse. You met Kid Cudi. You went to the Moon Man premiere. How was that? Tell us a little bit about that.
That was intense, man. Like I didn't think I could go. Like I was like, oh, I didn't get a ticket. I live really close to Revenge of, and I was like, oh man, I forgot to go over and get a ticket. And then Kyle texted me and he's like, hey, you coming tonight? And I was like, no, man, I can't get in. You guys already there. He's like, I'll get you in the green room. And I was like, nah. And he's like, yeah, come on down. So I drove down there and we just hung out in the green room with like his entourage and everything. And like it was a big thing. It was pretty crazy.
Looked like a movie premiere. Like it was. Oh man, it was insane.
They had so many people there. Like they started signing, I think around 7. They didn't stop for 2 hours straight. I think they just ran out of time. Like there was like an ordinance or something. I don't know. But the fans were really, really cool and they're very excited about the whole thing. And then they did a Q&A, just sort of talked about the whole project. And and Scott was really like very cool, very like you can just tell he's like a huge comic book fan. Like he just he just knows a lot about it and he's very excited about it. And it's just like that part's always fun because like, you know, I've seen a lot of like actors in some of the Marvel movies and DC movies where you're like, do you really like know anything about the comic books, or you're just doing that? Like I'm sure you bought your comic book for your and I feel like with Scott it was very clear. I was like, oh no, man, this is very much like this is what he wants to do. But yeah, it was he was great. Kyle was like, you know, Kyle's been working on that book for a long time and has put his heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into it. So it was so cool to actually see it all sort of finally get like the full red carpet treatment.
That's great.
Yeah. We're giving away a copy, so if you guys
it's a good book. It's a good book.
Leave a comment. Yeah, we'll
definitely
get you a copy.
Before we transition, I do want to say, like, I give the Infernals I'm fluctuating between like a 9, 9.5. Like, you nailed it.
Dude, me too.
100%.
I'm like so excited. Like, I swear to God, I can't remember the last time I was this excited for, like, it was Radiant Black, I think it was the last time when we read Radiant Black 1. I was like very excited, but this was better. Like, this is the best issue 1 I've read in a long time.
Oh,
seriously.
Man, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Like, I'm not just saying this for Ryan, okay? I'm saying it because I mean it. Like, it was a really good book. I was like, damn, man, this is like, it's like everything
Yeah.
you want from something like American Gods, and then like with Succession, and it's just fucking weird and creepy, and it captures the tone perfectly, and everyone, there's like snappy dialogue, and there's some really funny moments. I don't want to like spoil anything, but I actually laughed out loud like 2 times. One of them is like when the cop is talking to one of I forget their names, but when he's telling him, he's like,
Yeah.
3 people have like died like falling off your building in the last year.
Oh,
And he's just
yeah,
like,
that
well,
was
I don't
so-
know what to tell you. I'm just like, I literally laughed out loud. It was like,
In detective
There is-
school, we call that a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know what to tell you, man.
Like,
Okay.
I didn't realize. I actually think I stole a line from both of them. Like, there's a line in, I think it's Rogue Sun 17 when they're fighting in like the double page spread when they're fighting all of the like the bad guys and stuff. And there's a line where like Kill Switch says, like, usually this takes a lot longer, or usually this is a lot shorter. And I think I have Ari saying, I bet you tell that to all the girls. And I realized I think I stole that from B
Yeah.
saying that to De Niro in Infernals. So at least I'm stealing from myself, which is
Right.
good.
Oh, that's true.
I got to get a little less lazy on that. I can't make the same joke twice.
No, man. Speaking of Rogue Sun, guys, let's dive into Rogue Sun. It's time.
18.
But first of all, of course, last reminder: go buy Infernals, coming out next week on Valentine's Day. So good. There's some amazing covers as well, and yeah, oh my god, just make sure you stop by your comic store and check it out. And in terms of Rogue Sun, actually, we have one thing we want to mention before we dive into the discussion about the questions and everything is, guys, recently Humble Bundle announced that they're doing the entire Radiant Black and the Massiveverse, and that includes Rogue Sun volumes 1 and 2. The deal is crazy. You can basically read like almost the entire Massiveverse for like the price of 1 or 2 trades. So I highly
it's for
recommend
good
you check
cause.
that out. Yep, it's for a great
Do
cause.
we know when the offer goes away?
I think they said 3 weeks, so
Uh,
probably like 2.5 weeks from when we're recording this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
The offer
less.
ends in 14 days, 17
14
hours.
2 weeks.
Take advantage of that.
Yeah,
for
2 weeks.
sure.
Yeah, so
Cheapest
February
way to get
22nd.
these.
Yeah, you have until February 22nd to get basically the entire Massiveverse for the price of 1 trade. Seriously, which is crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So make sure
Yeah, I
you
didn't
get
know
that.
about this. I was like, what are we doing? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was fake. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, me too.
I thought it was fake too, I swear.
Yeah.
But then I saw his Humble Bundle. I'm like, no, it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Rogue Sun. As you can see, we have behind us, that's the cover, and zoomed in really by Luana Vecchio, the Rogue Sun 18. So we just finished the 3rd arc, which was from issue 13 to 18. And of course, Ryan already reminded us yesterday and earlier this week that no, Rogue Sun's not ending. If you've read the latest issue, it says Rogue Sun will return in May 2024. And you said it's a concept issue, right? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I could say like it's a flip book, which is something I've wanted to do for a really long time. I will try and not give away too much because I do want it to be a thing, but there's something that, and this is actually the first time I've actually talked about it. I think I've said the word flip book, but I haven't talked about what we're doing. There's something about comic books that I think are really cool is that if depending on I'm trying to figure out how to say this without ruining things. The art is consistent, but if you change the words or you change the captions, it can definitely shift the entire point of everything that's said and everything you see. And we are going to experiment with that in sort of the same way that we tried to experiment with with sort of the choose your own adventure element of that. Like it's a little bit of a special one shot kind of like, let's try this. And I picked it for this particular moment because I mean, I don't think this is a spoiler, but like the idea that Marcus might be back gives you this opportunity of these 2 different perspectives that you can play with.
Okay.
And so,
That's
yeah,
sweet.
it's a lot of fun. Mark Arena is doing the art for me one more time. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We've been playing with the concept. This is actually, I pitched this concept to DC 12 years ago and they didn't seem to get it. And so I was like, cool, I'm gonna do it myself then.
Yeah,
That's
What is
Image
DC
way.
doing
That's
right there? DC made some mistakes, it looks like.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I like trying to find stuff that like, I think Kyle said something a long time ago that always was like, we should strive to come up with ideas that are both character and story driven, but also ones that are specifically designed for the comic comic book medium, and this is something I don't think you can actually do in any other medium. You can't do it in movies or TV or novels. I don't think you can do something where you take one element and you flip one part of it and changes it. So I'm excited about that. It'll make more sense when you read it, but I think we play with some weird stuff. It's kind of fun.
Do you have the put your thumb here thing, like to hold the page to flip it, like the indicator? Like,
no, not this time. You're good. Actually, no. It's more like depending on what side you pick up, you get a different story in what order you read it.
Oh,
shit.
Okay. Ooh,
There's a reason the cover. If you find the cover, there's a reason the cover's made like a playing card.
Oh,
That's so
okay.
cool.
Whoa.
This one, right?
Big
The one on the back?
exclusives
Yep,
right
that's
there.
the one right there. So
Oh,
flip that
that is
upside down.
gorgeous.
Flip that upside down.
That's sweet.
See what I mean?
Oh, that's so cool.
Okay. I can't believe I didn't catch that.
So
but
cool.
yeah, I see
Wait,
it.
who did that cover? Is it Kelly or?
Yeah, Kelly did it. Yeah, Kelly.
Oh,
she did a whole set of
amazing.
playing cards, and I was like, "Hey, would you be willing to do one for us that's kind of that way?" And she's like, "Absolutely." And I was like, "Fantastic."
She's so talented.
She's
yeah,
great,
no, I
yeah.
love
Wow.
that. Yeah, I love that. Oh my god, this is so exciting.
That's
Yeah,
so
it's-
yeah. That's amazing to hear. And I just want to say this for some reason Rogue Sun wasn't on digital
Yeah,
this
I don't know
week,
what happened
so
there. I'm so sorry.
yeah
It's not
no,
it's not their fault.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
It's because it was
just-
other image books too. It was like Kaya and Love Everlasting
Yeah.
were missing too. So it's not whoever
Yeah,
is
no,
out
no.
there thinking
Yeah.
it's a Massiveverse thing. It's not a Massiveverse thing.
No.
It's not a Michael thing. It's not a
It's
Black
a-
Market Narrative thing.
it's a
It's
Kindle,
a fucking Amazon
Amazon.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we-
Amazon thing.
they're like, but
Maybe-
yeah. Anyway, so
Mhm.
so I went to the comic book store, which I haven't normally been doing because it's a little farther away now. But I went there and I had a big stack of books. I wasn't there for a while, and I was handing them out, and I had Rogue Sun 18 at the bottom, and there was this kid there with his mom, and I put out Rogue Sun. He's like, "Oh, you're reading it too?" He's like, "Oh, I love the
Ooh.
choose your own adventure," is what he said first. So I just wanted to tell you that he
awesome.
loved that issue, was his favorite issue. So I just thought that was cool also too, that like this kid must have been like 13 or 14. So like
Oh, that's
seeing
great.
kind of
Oh,
like
wow.
a younger age, it was actually really, really cool to
That's
see.
awesome.
So
Thank you. I love to hear that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
Amazing.
Choose Your Own Adventure is probably my favorite thing I've ever made. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
It was so
Yeah.
good.
great.
it was just fun,
good.
and like I was such a huge fan of that like those books when I was a kid, and to be
Yeah.
able to do it and I think the thing that I was the happiest is like I think I've told you guys this, like I was very scared about the loop in it without giving anything away. Like I was like
Yeah.
I at the last minute was like, let's get it, let's change that, let's not do that. And it was Nick, my co-writer, who's like, you know what, man? Like, you got smart readers and you've got people who are invested, and it's not a novel, it's a comic book. Like, it's not so huge that it'll be impossible to read. He's like, trust that they will be invested enough to make it work, and that when they do it, they'll feel
Satisfied.
it'll open up the book into an emotional way that it wouldn't if you didn't do it that way. And he talked me into it, and I'm so happy that he did, because I just got scared because I didn't want anybody. I was really afraid people would get frustrated and be like, "Screw this book," and like throw it down.
Well,
and walk away.
the 13, 14-year-old
Loved
got
it.
it. He nailed it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
There's my
Yeah, I
demo.
loved it.
Yeah.
Is that we actually
It's-
had like a core
yeah.
memory for me. I remember playing like Devil May Cry on PS2, and there's a part where he goes into like the caves, and you keep getting lost because it's like this forest that looks the same every time you go through. And I remember it literally reminded me of playing that. And I was like, man, when you get it, it's so satisfying. It's like, I beat you, haha, you know what I mean? And it's a
Yeah.
great story. So I love.
You guys
it.
ever
Yeah,
play
it's my favorite issue.
the Walking Dead Telltale game?
Telltale? Yeah.
I've heard of
Yeah.
them. I haven't played
Holy
them, but
dude,
yeah.
if play it, I swear it's the
Yeah.
it's a choose your own adventure kind of thing where it's like it's not really like a thing, but like you have to sort of make choices. And there are moments in that book in that game that are core memories like that. Like I'll remember where I was when something happened because I thought there was no way that like you make all these choices and then something happens. You're like, but that's not what I wasn't supposed to. That's not what's supposed to happen. Like it's amazing. I played that game with my wife, and it was absolutely that we played that game straight for 3 days, and she was so sad when it was over because it's better than the show. It's better than the TV show by like a country mile, in my personal opinion. So
damn,
That's
I'll check it out. No, that's sweet.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, Telltale's awesome.
they were the best, man. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, obviously one thing we've noticed, one thing we love, of course, and we're spoiled as readers, is having Abel and Marco Renna be the two artists that were working together over the last arc and doing two different things. Like I think Marco Renna was doing everything inside the Sunstone, and then Abel was doing everything outside. It like really elevated the book even more because it makes it feel like the otherworldly element of the book was really heightened during that, because you really get to feel two distinct styles, but they're also close enough to where it doesn't feel like, abrupt. So was that always the plan? Like, did you always know you were going to have two artists and you guys were going to do that, or did that just come together?
Some of that came from, I remember on a lot of the Power Ranger books, we would have two artists on there, and I remember Daphne Plebin, who was my editor on the book, would say like, we want to do this. Sometimes you do it for not budgetary reasons, but for like schedule reasons, where it's just, it's easier to get two people on there and get the book done in half the time. But part of it was, she was like, when you are doing stuff that takes place in multiple locations or in different areas, sometimes those two different styles can help orient the reader a little bit. And so, and Marco is somebody that I'd been wanting to work with since Power Ranger days, and I just thought, let's just do that. Like, that'll make things a little easier. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that just made stuff a little. It was just having two artists work there was just something that, doing a monthly book is a grind. It is like there's like it is you'd be shocked at how it's just there's no time off, and if you get sick or if somebody gets injured or if things happen, it just makes it like it can be hard. And so having two artists that you trust and that you really like, and like you said, are stylistically close enough, I think gave us that ability to sort of hit our deadlines most of the time. But also just allowed me to work with two people that I really wanted to work with. So I just felt like, if we're gonna have two different locations, like let's try that. That'll be really fun to do that. And I think it ended up working out pretty well. Like I was pretty happy with it, and just seemed like, yeah, why not? Like it's always fun to try and do something different. So
yeah, definitely. So 18 was a hell of an issue. I think we kind of buried the lead here. Like I think you nailed it. Like there was a lot of juggling to do, like legitimately, like having 5 characters possessed by 5 other characters. It actually, like one character being possessed by 3 at a time. Like it was wild. Like how difficult was that, juggling that and making sure that the character dynamics lined up perfectly, like having Brock and Billy Blood Moon and having Vanessa and Gwen together. Like how did that come together?
It's funny, like, when you said that's like, that's right, they've been pissed by 3 different people, yeah. I remember when we came up with the Crystal Menagerie, which is the gems and Perrin jewelry, and the idea that that's where they would be held. I remember thinking, oh man, it'd be really cool if you put on the jewelry and you could use the power of the person that you did that, but then you could actually, and then I was like, but it should have a side effect. And the side effect, I was like, well, it should have the same thing that happens with Rogue Sun, which is where the villain is standing there. And so I just love that idea of like, you're trying to use this power and you're fighting, and the villain's standing there criticizing you or angry at you or like making fun of you. And I thought that was such a fun, because it's that thing, you get to get into their character. You get them to usually, it's a way to have a hero and a villain talk without fighting each other. And I thought that was really fun. I always love that stuff. And so I knew I wanted to put that in here. And I also really like the idea of the theme of sort of the first arc is sort of a big metaphor for a divorce, right? It's literally a superhero being pulled between his father and his mother, and he has to choose sides. And his answer is, I choose neither one of you, and he sort of pushes them both away. And so the second arc is him basically saying, I want to be my own man and I'll make my own decisions. And then sort of realizing the consequences of making all those wrong decisions. And then what I liked about it was that it sort of pushed his family away from him. Like this new family that he was in there with, he didn't really know them. He didn't really embrace them. The minute he walks in there, he's a little bit of an asshole to them. And what I thought was really cool was by the end of that, they sort of push against him as well. And so I wanted arc 3 to be about how his family sort of came together to try and save him. Like they realized the sacrifice he was making. And so you have this story about all of them sort of like, I don't know if there's a line, I don't know if you realize it, but there's a moment, I think it's the first time she says it, when Ari pulls Caleb out of the body. She says, I got to like give my brother his body back. That's the first time she calls him her brother. And so like,
that's cool.
That's what I liked about it, was like by the end of this arc, it feels like they've all kind of buried the hatchet, and now we can maybe start to be that sort of found family that Dylan's never really had and sort of respects, because look, they fought for themselves and they fought for him and fought alongside him. And I thought that was what would be fun, is like use a superhero as a metaphor for a family sort of finally coming together around sort of a sort of, you know, this fractured family, sort of all the parts sort of fit together. So that was kind of the intention.
And Dylan kind of like earned his stripes coming from the Sunstone. It wasn't just given to him. Like he actually showed that hey, I'm worthy of this. I came out of the Sunstone and I managed to survive too. So like, I feel like you nailed it with so many relationships in that. And before we started, you mentioned that you really liked the Gwen and Juliet dynamic. That was genius. And I think you've actually low key written like the best soap opera in comics as well, with just those panels alone. Like that was great.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the who's pregnant with whose baby and all that stuff coming up, and someone will come back. Yeah, no,
Tune in for volume 4.
Exactly, yeah. Like I like the soapy stuff, because I feel like the soapy stuff to me is always like that's the heart and that's the fun part, and like that makes makes characters a little bit more memorable. I think everybody can be kind of cool, and everybody can play. And like plot stuff is, I like plot. Like I think plot's good, but I've always thought this, and I think it's true, is like plot is an excuse for character. Like going into the Sunstone and seeing more Rogue Sons and learning about the history and hopefully get touching on that stuff, I think that's cool, and I'm glad people like that. But what that story was for me was, it was really about Dylan meeting Owen and seeing the relationship that his father had that his dad had with his grandfather, and saying, I don't want that relationship. Like what I love about it is, if you see that sequence, like Dylan goes in there. And I love that Owen is like his biggest fan. Owen's like, dude, you're the best. Like, you're the best kid around. It's like, this asshole over here doesn't know what he's doing. And you're just watching Dylan, like Marcus just seethe, because he's like, you're showing him more affection than you ever showed me. And what I like is at the end of that, and what's even cooler is like Marcus pretends he doesn't care, but in the fight against Viking Son, you see very clearly that like he loved his dad very much, and was so he had locked it into his brain that one time his dad said that he was proud of him. And so, but he never got to tell him, and they never had that relationship. It was too far gone. And also you see that whole sequence with Owen telling Dylan, I loved your dad. I loved your dad more than anything in the world, but I knew that if I ever showed him that, he could get killed. And I made him the best Rogue Son there is. So that's what it is. And I like that when he comes out of the Sunstone, and all comes down to that, you get the sense that Dylan is finally gone. I don't want that relationship with my dad. And if we continue down that path, we are going to become the same people. And so let's change that. And that's what I really, that's what the Sunstone was for me. It was about meeting somebody and going, oh, without getting into details, I don't think she watches this, so I can probably say it. Like I'll just use a fake person. I met a fake person, and then I met their mother, and I was like, oh, I see why you are the way that you are. I'll just leave it at that. Not a real person at all. So.
Fictional person, just like Dylan or any of the other bells.
Just got ignited, man. Like Rogue Son.
And even the way you had the Sunstone showing these cycles of previous Rogue Sons, and just how like, hey, I kind of want to change things and break the cycle. Even like Kyle had that tagline for Ordinary Gods of break the cycle. Like we see, it's so well documented, the failings of families and stuff like that. And in my generation, a lot of people younger than me probably feel like it almost feels hopeless, and you want those changes into these cycles that are so obvious, but so hard to.
I mean, that's Caleb's entire motivation as a bad guy, is to break the cycle. Like he is. Yeah. I love the idea that he was like a Jedi that had like fought he believed in everything, and then he had died tragically. And then it was only after he became a Force ghost and saw every other Jedi who came after him do the same thing over and over again, that's what turns him to the dark side. It was just like, I thought I was going to be special and we were going to change the world, and all we do is fight the same losing battle over and over and over again. Somebody's got to change this. Like he thinks he's the savior of the world, even though he's like, we can't beat Morningstar, so let's just join him and stop this nonsense so that we don't have to struggle. It's the same thing as this. It's somebody, he looks at the same thing that Dylan's looking at and goes, I don't want to fall into the same pattern as everybody else. And so that's why those two things are thematically connected.
I really like one thing about the series that I especially liked, especially towards the end, is like, I don't know if this was like obviously like, part of the plan, but it somehow worked out anyway, was at the beginning, one person that we saw who sacrificed himself, it was Reggie, right? Like he made an honorable thing, and we see that moment early on in issue, I think 13, when Caleb in the body of Dylan goes and speaks for him, but actually manages to do something good. So right, like he makes the mom feel better temporarily. But what's ironic is that this whole time that Dylan is in the body of Caleb, like for once we see what it's like for him to get bullied. Like, do you know what I mean? Because like he's usually the bully, he's the guy stuffing people in the lockers, but like figuratively now he's stuffed in a locker, right? And he even like he kind of comments on that himself, where he's like, he says like, I want to be the guy who can actually like look at himself in the mirror. You know what I mean? Things like that. That's a lot of him monologuing early on and saying like these things, but he's like, I have to deal with this first. So it was really interesting to see Dylan go from like the person who's doing all the tormenting to someone who's actually just being tormented like helplessly for once, and there's literally nothing he can do, to the point where like you said, he's forced to confront some of his demons with his father, confront how he feels about that situation, and then they come out of that differently. So I was just thinking, like, was that part of it also as well, or does that just conveniently work out because just crafted a good story?
That's a really good observation that I don't think I like knew, or it wasn't intentional. But sometimes if you are hopefully on the right track, those things tend to tie together in ways that even you don't quite realize. Like I never thought about that fact that he's kind of in the locker. I kind of wish I'd made a straight reference to that. That would have been a really good thing. It's like, like that'd have been cool. It's like, like you put kids in lockers all the time, and now you're going to sit in the locker and watch me do a better job at your life than you are. Yeah. And that was like, that's a really good observation that I hadn't really thought about. But yeah, I think that's probably why you start to see him. I like that I really like the idea that in the first issue or so that he was literally like, he's watching this guy do better. Like he's wooing, he's not Vanessa. What's the girl's name? I'm blanking on the characters. I read too many comic books. Is it Vanessa? I think it's Vanessa.
Is it
right?
Vanessa?
Yeah,
It is Vanessa.
yeah, that sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's Juliet and
Julia, Vanessa, Gwen.
Gwen.
Yeah. Gwen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Gwen. It's Gwen and it's Gwen and Juliet, and then Vanessa. And I like the idea that he's like, Vanessa's like, he's reconnecting with Vanessa, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" Like he's just like, he's so frustrated that like he's doing better at wooing the girl that I like and making Reggie's parents feel good, and like you're my parent, like my stepmom and my stepbrother like you more than me. Like this is bullshit. Like I just thought like that's a good way to like start to realize like maybe I need to change the way that I am. And I do think this is the arc where you see the biggest adjustment to Dylan. I think he's starting to realize I can't keep acting the way that I act in order and with the consequences and the stakes that are involved. I just can't do that. And even by the end, you see him talk to his dad in a way that is like, like let's change this up. Like let's figure out a better way to make this work. Now, whether or not he can stick on that path and ultimately not, backslide into the person that he is at his heart, we'll see. But that was the intention anyway. It was like you said, lock him away and then just take his body away. And he's like, okay, whew. All right, let's do a better job. I got a second chance of life here. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm definitely glad Marx is going back, because I feel like so far that whole like duality or two people in the same body thing has been a staple of the book so far.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see it come back and continue. But we've all talked about how one of our favorite things about this book is not just the amount of villains, but the detail and how well they fit in the story. So in this arc, we got to meet a lot of them. We saw them a lot more use their powers. But which one are you most excited to explore more moving forward?
So Alienator is a character that I really love. I think I said this earlier to you guys when I first signed on. Like there was like a moment I love that moment in Suicide Squad when Captain Boomerang like leaves the bar when they're all just like, if anybody's like not ready to do this, and like then he just books it. And I always thought that was cool. And I was so angry when he just shows back up later. And I was like, no, he's a villain. He left. Yeah. And so I heard it was in that sequence when I was trying to when Caleb is sort of like recruiting all of the menagerie of the criminals, and it was just like if any of you guys don't want to be here, and Alienator just books it, and I was like, I just thought that was so fun, and just doesn't show up again, and so I was like, okay. What was really fun to me was like I kind of just did that as like not a joke, but like part of it was like I had a lot of villains, and I was like, well, I'm kind of outnumbered. Like this is the behind the scenes stuff. Like I was like, I think I might have too many villains, and like I only have so many heroes, and I was like trying to measure up who's fighting who and everything. And I said I can just get rid of Alienator, that'll be okay. And then what I love about it though is it opened up a whole new story for him that I hadn't really thought about, but I had sort of subconsciously planted. Like if you read the book, there's one of the characters in the book actually says what I'm doing with Alienator, and I didn't realize it until that moment. And it worked perfectly, and that's why he's
go
going to
back.
be. Yeah,
Yeah.
Gotta go back and read all this stuff.
every sentence. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. You know I'm gonna
it's
do
in
it.
code
that's
written
gonna
in
go.
blacklight. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude,
But,
Alienator is so cool, man. Yeah.
it's a fun
Yeah.
character, and so like we're gonna do something fun with that character for a few issues coming up in the next arc. So I think that's the one I'm most excited for because I think it asks a really interesting question, is sort of about the morality of villains and sort of ultimately, you know, what Rogue Sun's doing with them and if he continues to do that and all that stuff. So I like the questions that it asks.
Okay.
Cool.
Quick spoiler question. In the last page of 18, you set up 3 threads. It says in the months to come. And then on the left, it's obviously Alienator. On the right, it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, the aviary is being attacked. Like there's some invasion or something. And then in the middle, is that someone we're supposed to know?
That character has been mentioned, but not seen.
Divinity.
There goes my theory.
Okay, it's there.
Divinity.
Okay, that's
I'm not gonna say anything. I think I'm on to something. I
The
think I'm on
tattoo
to
now
something.
makes sense. Yep. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That was
very
another
excited.
situation where I mentioned the character and didn't really have a story, and then I was like, "Oh, wait a minute."
That's
I
awesome.
drove to Vegas to see my parents, and in like a 4-hour drive, I cracked the whole thing, and I was like, "Well, I know what the next arc is." There you go.
Hell yeah. Oh, I'm very
Awesome.
excited.
That's
All
great.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was personally shocked. Like I was going through since issue 13 how much stuff you went through this year. We got the therapy scene, like we had the whole arc down, like he was buried, we had him breaking out, we had a whole war going on. Like just the amount of stuff you tackled was insane, and it was a very satisfying end. We've talked a lot about the growth of Dylan, for sure, and kind of I remember you talking about definitely after Reggie's death, how much this was a growth period for him. But kind of going away from Dylan, Marcus, he's coming back. We see him coming back into the mix. What do you think his biggest lesson is? And do you think he's kind of coming back with a new perspective on things? And what do you kind of expect from him?
I agree with you. Like, I think the book missed Marcus. Like, I really enjoy having his perspective in there. Like that sort of like that sort of aggressive, not aggressive, but like I guess like that sort of overbearing father figure that like nothing you do will ever be good enough, and I'm never going to tell you you're good at this, but I'm going to be there for you, and I'm actually rooting for you. Like I look at it this way, like I feel like if someone were to talk trash about Dylan, talk trash to Marcus about Dylan, he would stand up for that kid in a second, unless unless Dylan was actually there, and then he'd let him rip him. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I get to talk trash about him, but you don't get to do that. And I feel like that's what Marcus is. It's like, that's my son. So I think maybe the arc for him, or not the arc, but like what we're trying to play for is like how critical is too critical. And if you're too critical, can that actually stop somebody from achieving their full potential? Because there's a line to walk there of wanting to push somebody to be the best they are, but ultimately, you know, they might lose faith in you if they don't feel like you are on their side. And I feel like that's what Marcus, the thing that I really liked about the last arc was there's a moment where Viking Son says to him, you would really give up an opportunity to live again and get to do all the stuff that you wanted for a kid that you already abandoned. And he says, yes, I would. And like what I love about that is like Marcus has a lot of problems. Marcus is not a good dad. Obviously, Marcus abandoned his kid and built a whole new family and handed him the Sunstone when for reasons that probably weren't the best reasons. However, like he does, once he gave him the Sunstone, like he is committed to making him the best Rogue Son there is. Like he has routinely, he's never betrayed him. He's never done anything that unless somebody could probably check me on this, but like I'm pretty sure he's been there for him and he might not be the best teacher in the world, but he's trying his absolute best to be there and has never betrayed him. And I feel like that is like he says one thing, but if you look at his actions are pretty straightforward and pretty good. And I think it's going to be more of Dylan realizing like it's about the two of them sort of finding the middle ground. of
Yeah.
of like, Dylan doesn't make it easy. Like, he's an asshole.
No.
Like, it's just like
No.
he's a little cocky little bastard who talks trash, and it's like you want to smack that kid in the head. And I feel like it's the two of them. One's got to lay off a little bit of the sass, and one of them's got to lay out a little bit of the critical. And in the middle, they'll probably find that footing. But that's hard, man. If you've ever been around somebody that just like can't help themselves, you're just like, oh God, if you just told me you were sorry, we could move past this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the way I feel like they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he honestly got like a new perspective in a way, kind of being in the back seat, like when they emerged already, and you saw Marcus in action, and he's talking a little bit of trash, and Dylan's like, oh, I didn't know you were all about this. Like so I feel like that's kind of cool too. Like he has a newfound perspective on his dad too, that I don't think he really knew. So yeah, it was very well done.
I wish I had another page for the moment that Ari like swallowed Caleb or absorbed Caleb. And then what's cool about that was like Michael, my editor, realized that. He goes, hey, so Ari's gonna be with Demonica, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, so he's using her powers. I'm like, yeah. He's like, that means she can see Marcus. And I was like, oh, that's freaking brilliant. Because like in the first, I think it's the second issue or whatever, he's like, is my dad here? And he's like, tell him I'm not here. And he's like, he told me to tell you he's not here. And I was like, you fucking asshole. But like that thing, all she wanted to do was see her dad, and she does after doing. And the reason she tried to bring Caleb back was like, I wanted to see my dad, and so she finally does that thing. She actually does get a chance to see her dad again. I wish I had another moment. I wanted to have another page where they had a little bit of a conversation but I also think maybe I can have that happen down the line at some point. Yeah, but.
The issue was jam packed. I love that, and I also loved Brock. Brock getting to fight with his dad, like seeing his dad and getting to like fight werewolves or fight as werewolves or whatever as them. Like that was a nice moment. And freaking Byron with the door, like you said, you wanted me to open doors for you. Like I freaking love that. That's so cheesy. Like you've got like rom-coms in the background that I forget going on. It's so good. Like, it's amazing. No question.
Thank you.
I'm invested in the Byron story. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, definitely.
I'm sure nothing bad will happen to Byron.
No.
Uh-oh.
No.
Oh, that's great.
But speaking of Ari, to me that was one of the biggest kind of loose threads, especially when she says, or Brock says, back to being ordinary again, and then she says, speak for yourself. So like now it got me thinking, like, is Caleb in there? Does she have a permanent connection with Demonica? Because I feel like everybody else they can kind of separate amicably. So that's something I'm excited to look forward to. And
I would say that Caleb being absorbed by Ari and Marcus's reaction to that probably tells you everything you need to know, or at least hints at where this is going. But like when I realized that was the way that I wanted to end it. That was why there's kind of fun if you go back and read the scenes between when Caleb is taking over Dylan's body and he's talking to Ari. Like there's like a weird sort of respect there. If you listen to the way he talks to her, he's like, he definitely should have chosen you as the person. He even says, I could have made you a queen if you'd have backed me on this whole thing. Like he had a weird sort of understanding of that she was the smart. Also, she's the one who brought him out. She's the one who freed him from the stone. So like the fact that he might, maybe not, might be a part of her now could be real interesting.
Yeah, Ari's my favorite of the Bell clan, other than like Marcus. Like she's so interesting. She's always doing something smart. Like she's the kind of kid that like she makes good points that the parent can barely dismiss. Like when she's talking to her mom, like you just got these powers too. Like mid fight, like you don't know any more than we do.
You know what you're talking about?
Like what do you say to that? Like she's smart and she's really interesting to watch, especially like that issue 18 cameo of Radiant Black. Like I don't know, you're always wondering what she's gonna be up to next.
Yeah, she's got a little bit of a chip on her shoulder. Yeah, a little bit of chip on her shoulder though about that stuff. Like I think she thinks she's smart. That's the thing. It's just like, okay, yeah, all right, thank you. Glad this won't hurt us.
She has, unfortunately, in a few ways, but yeah, hopefully. I wanted to. I was wondering if it was just kind of turned out this way, but the Walking Dead variant, I believe that was issue 17. Did it just worked out that way that you had zombies?
Totally, right? I couldn't believe it.
That's incredible.
It was that month, and they're like, "Hey, we can use the Walking Dead in our books." I'm like, "I have zombies in my book. This is nuts. This is perfect." I am not that
Yeah, that
smart.
works
No,
amazing.
God no, I'm not that
Okay,
smart.
yeah, I was
Although
I
I'm
was
2
super
for
curious.
2. I've had Medieval Spawn and The
Yeah.
Walking Dead now, and they both
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
lined up with what the book's covers were. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm 2 for 2.
Awesome. So I guess with Kyle, we've always known this because he's made it clear in terms of being asked in interviews and in general on social media. But like he's mentioned, like if Radiant Black ever gets optioned, you know, he wants to do everything. But like let's say Rogue Sun gets optioned, like would you want to see it become an animated series? Would you want to see it become live action? Have you ever had any like hopes for Rogue Sun getting some sort of media, you know, something?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that would be cool. Like, I write in animation a little bit. I've done animated movies and stuff like that, and I work in film and TV a little bit, and like, yeah, I think it would be awesome. I'd be really excited. I think it's hard, because it's just as we've seen, like, there's just a lot of superhero movies, and there's a lot of it's a pretty saturated marketplace when it comes to superhero movies. But I think there's a good enough hook in it that I think it could probably stand out from maybe. It feels like we're in the postmodern superhero phase where like the only superhero movies that work are the ones. There's two ones that work, right? There's the ones that are like the ones that don't matter, like Batman, Superman, Spider Man, like the ones that are
Evergreen.
the
Too big to
classic.
fail.
Yeah, they can't fail exactly because we love those characters so much. But it feels like all the other superhero movies that succeed need to be something that sort of subverts the expectation. It's like, oh, it's a superhero movie, but it's also this, like The
Yeah.
Boys, I think are part of that. It's like, if we're at the point where we're subverting the tropes of the superhero genre. And if you just put out like a straight superhero book that's not one of the classics, it's going to be hard. And I think that's what you're seeing with some of the ones that haven't really worked, like Aquaman and Marvel or not the Marvels, like those ones, they don't have that unique hook, and they're not one of the iconic top ones, and that's why I
Yeah.
think we've sort of moved off of them a little bit. So, like, I think Rogue Sun would have a hard road. It'd be a hard road to hoe. But the good news is, the longer the book goes out, and the more people read it, and hopefully we can keep finding ways to make the story. Like, I think Invincible is sort of the path that we're all kind of following a little bit,
Yeah.
which is that like it took a while, but when it was so good and it amassed so many fans that ultimately it elevated itself. So
Yeah, and I like that all your books like are aware of what they are. I think they, you know what I mean. Like the Rogue Sun is very much aware of what it is. It's a really good superhero book. It's great, and it always sticks by. Like I think you guys were talking about characterization earlier, and I think the characterization in Massiveverse is very strong, but in particular in Rogue Sun and Radiant Black, it's very very strong. Like the Rogues Gallery, I think is very identifiable. So if you're someone reading these books, I think especially Rogue Sun, like it's very easy to remember the Rogues Gallery because they're so like they are very well characterized. They are easy to remember. They have big moments throughout the issues, so it's really easy to invest like emotionally and get others interested. I wanted to say today when we tweeted out that image from the final issue, sorry, from the image from the Rogue Sun 18 on the final page where it says Rogue Sun will return May 2024. A lot of people were really excited. A lot of people were concerned it was ending. So a lot of people were like, "Oh my god, I'm so happy it's continuing. Rogue Sun's the best book in the Massiverse." Blah blah blah. So it's just like it was really always nice to see that enthusiasm, right? Like it's nice to be like people like, "No, like don't end this. Like I'm loving this. Let's keep it going." So I just generally it's always positive reception when a new issue comes out, and that's always. I imagine for you that's amazing, and for us it's always amazing because it gets us like, yeah, people are liking this too. You know, like more people should be in on this train. But yeah. So
I don't know, man. It's bonkers to me that people have reading stuff that comes out of my brain. Like I don't know. Like I was like, it's still like I'm like, really? Like cool. Like the idea that people are like excited for it is, I don't know, it's fun. Like it's still really fun and exciting for me to do. And so I love that. And like it's just like I still pinch myself that I can't believe I have a superhero in the Image universe. Like I just don't think I'll ever be able to wrap my head around that. Like I won't be able to. Like I love Image so much. Like when I was 13, man, like I bought every single one of those freaking books, and the idea that somebody like a 13-year-old kid could come in and be like, "Oh, I love that's one of my favorite." I'm like, "What? That's amazing!" Like that's the age I was. So like that's the kid's killer, and you guys doing this, man, like taking the time to review stuff because at this stage in around the 18, 19, 20 mark in most comic books, like the audiences have kind of not necessarily moved on, but like they either like it or they don't, and they've found new. There's been 20 months of new books, or 2 years of new books that have come out, and the number ones are exciting, and people just sort of move off. And so like the fact that there's anybody still reading is like pretty crazy to me and pretty amazing. So and that's partly because you guys are spreading the word, so I appreciate it.
Oh no, we love doing it. And you set up so many threads like and little like seeds throughout the issues that we're always so excited. I mean, we were talking literally about Alienator a while back, and like a while back, the first time we saw Alienator, we compared him to Battle Beast, and we're like,
yeah, he had to go to the washroom during the therapy session.
Exactly. And he was talking shit, if you guys remember, like when they were like, oh, like Dottie's enjoying this, you know what I mean? Like she's like enjoying having the power and shit, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, dude, I love the character, and they see like, oh, like clearly he listens to what we're saying. That not only you're thinking about these characters too, because we see them come back, and that gets us super excited. Like as readers, we're just like, man, I audibly gasped when I saw Alienator on the last. I was like, yes, you know, and see like Aviary getting attacked. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, there's so many questions. We literally just closed out an arc, and we thought we had some answers, and here's a million more questions, and that's the best way to get people excited. So yeah, no, thank you. You guys have been killing it on the book, and there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Damn it, I forgot.
The silver suit type, the white suit, the Rogue Sun, like White Knight, like that's badass. Like, any background on that? Like, how'd that come to be?
Some of it was practical. Some of it was me going like, okay, I don't know if people are going to be able to track who's fighting whom at this point. And I was like, so that's where it started. It was like, we need a new form, because I don't know if people are going to figure out who's fighting whom and why they're fighting, stuff like that. So like I was doing that, but the thought process was like, okay, if Dylan and Marcus like spirits are both inside of a suit of armor, that's like twice the fire. Like I was like, okay, so, and that concept of something being white hot was kind of cool. So I was like, we had thought like, what if it turns blue, or if it's like starts to burst with fire? And I was like, what if it just goes white? What if it just starts to like the paint and the stuff starts to melt off and it just looks different? And I was like, that could be really cool. And then I also was like, it was like thematically, it was the idea that they had to win because the two of them had to form and to come together, right? And so, it's funny, like I didn't really know what the form was going to be. And then I remembered the page that I did in Supermassive, where if you go to that one page where Abel sees, or sorry, not Abel, when Dylan sees the future, it says like his dad's grave, and there's Rogue Sun behind him, and the helmet comes off, and I was like, oh, I'll use that form. That's the form that I had used as that thing, as sort of like not a placeholder, but as a thing that I knew I could use. And I was like, oh, there it is. And so somebody, I think on one of the Reddits or Discords, like noticed it and called it out. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. So good eyes on you.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that was the fun part. It was like, some of it was just practical, being like, like you said, there's a lot of characters in this thing. And even like, I'll be honest, like when my comps came the other day and I read 18 before it came out, and I was like, this issue sucks. I was like, people are going to be so confused. They're not going to know what's happening. Like the lettering's going to be tough. Like there's just no way people are going to be able to track it. So I was very disappointed. I was very happy that I haven't heard a lot of that, but, so like we had some last minute things that needed to be adjusted, but like that I freak out about, and Michael's like, relax, it's fine. So, you know,
I feel like in a binge too, that problem gets resolved of maybe wondering which character is possessed by who. And the text boxes and lettering really carried a lot of the weight for that and really helped get us through that. No, it was great.
And what I did want to mention earlier was, in the same way you were excited when you got all the image books, honestly, we are too. That's honestly part of the reason why we're always talking about like Radiant Black teaming up with Rogue Sun, or Radiant Black teaming up with Invincible, because it's like, I imagine how you guys felt when you saw Image United, like for the first time, even though it was never finished, right? Yeah, so it's like, can you imagine like Rogue Sun, like, and now we have like newer books, like Tim Seeley's doing like Local Man, that book's excellent. So to think like someone like from Local Man, even like teaming up with, just the idea, like even though it's like far off, it probably never happened, but just the idea that it could, it just is enough to get us to be like, man, this is amazing. And honestly, I still believe one day it will. Like, can you imagine like Rogue Sun meeting like Savage Dragon or something like? Come on, man. Or Spawn, like they kind of, we already did kind of see the Spawn thing. You already did that, and that was amazing in Supermassive. But like, you know what I mean?
Ricardus in the Infernals would be friggin' sweet. The Ice Cream Man demon, but like that's just like fan fiction kind of shit. But like, there's you guys have a rich universe, and that's why I think like Amazon should tap into you guys and like make like an Image universe. Like really. like Invincible's popped off. Like I feel like that's been the move for a couple years, but whatever. Anyways, what were you saying, Bash?
I was gonna say, well, we've taken up a lot of time, but one last thing we want to do before we let Ryan go, because we hardly get to speak. It's probably once every arc, and we love talking to him. We have some questions from people on the social medias. When we put the thing out that we were gonna talk today. So the first one you just answered about the
Oh, did I? Okay.
yeah, about the vision from Supermassive. So there you go, Owen. The other question is, so it says, my question for Ryan is, when you came up with the idea of Caleb possessing Dylan's body and trying to prove that he is a better Rogue Son than Dylan, was Superior Spider-Man a big influence on that idea?
Probably in a way that even I probably don't want to admit. Yeah, like that's a great arc. I remember like I remember when I heard what that arc was, I was like, that's genius. That's what a crazy concept. And I love anytime you can make like a villain sort of have to be like a hero for a little while, or like begrudgingly be one. I thought that was really cool. But like I think I said earlier, like it was to me, it was more about Caleb. I think Caleb knows he's a better Rogue Son than Dylan. I think he just wanted to break the cycle and wanted to like stop that process. So it was more about like that. Like I like the idea that, if someone would take over your body and do a better job in your life than you, and then slowly want to change it and take over the world, it seemed like a cool way to like flip the whole thing on its head. But yeah, Superior Spider-Man was definitely probably in the back of my head. I probably stole some actual lines from it, if I'm not being honest.
All right. Well, there you go, Owen. The other question from Comics and Crosses says, I personally love the world of Rogue Son all by itself, but are there more plans for Rogue Son to show up across the Massiveverse? I'm assuming in Supermassive. And then he says, where do you see his power level in comparison?
Power level. I mean, he's always getting better. Like I like the story where Dylan's slowly learning how to do better. Like I don't know if you guys have noticed, like he can't conjure the sword anymore because like he didn't know how to do that. That was all Caleb. So that's gonna be a plot point later on where he's like, I don't know how to make the damn sword. It's like, but I like that he's like slowly getting better. Like he's getting better at like understanding stuff and knowing how to use the weapon and there's other stuff in his skill set that I have hinted at that I haven't shown yet. So that'll be in there. But what was the first part of the question was, where we show up? Yeah, I mean, obviously he comes up in Supermassive. So every time we do that, and like Kyle and I talk about doing it all the time. Like we have talked about doing a thing where we like trade villains, so we could I could take on Shift, and he could take on like Cataclysm or Blood Moon or somebody, and like how fun that would be just because it's such a different flip. But it's just like the problem is it's just like we're always so busy trying to. I just think it'd be weird if like Rogue Son just showed up in the Catalyst War all of a sudden. You're like, hey, how's this trial going there, buddy? I gotcha. It feels like I probably can't do that because of the way that Kyle's so meticulous when he plans out his arcs that it's hard to find those little windows where things line up pretty good. We do the best we can to try, and that's why Supermassive usually comes at the end of an arc, because it's like we usually have that pivot point where you're not we the thing that we never want to do is we never want a cameo or a story to come in and derail what the other person's story is doing. So it's finding those little moments. So we talk about it all the time. It's just finding it in weird spots. But I've always, and hopefully this won't get in trouble, but like I'm always trying to find ways for us to expand the Massiveverse storytelling and finding ways to tie things together and open things up and just do stuff that's different. So if we can find a way to do that, then definitely Rogue Son will appear in the Nether section as soon as we can figure out a cool way to do it.
Get Finnegan root to marry Satomi.
Sorry?
Get Finnegan root to marry Radiant Red there. Get Satomi. That'd be
there we go.
That'd be crazy.
Jesus Christ. That's good punishment for what she did to Nathan. I'm just saying.
Finnegan seems like a gentle dude. I don't know. Anyway.
So we got another question from Hal's 182, and he says, I actually like this question. He says, when Rogue Son eventually becomes a TV show or an animated series or film, who would you like to see portray Dylan/Rogue Son? Thanks for being a constant positive in my life, Ryan. Look forward to meeting you.
Yeah, I remember him. Like I owe him. Like I told him I'd send him a book if he did a dance in the comic book store, and he did, and I still haven't sent the book, and I feel like a jerk. I think I've said it to him like 3 times on this podcast. So like, I will eventually, man. I promise. I soon. I'm, and it'll be the longer it takes me to get it to you, the better it'll be.
There you go.
Oh yeah, it'll be plated in gold or something. No, I'm not kidding.
Wonderful.
Just set that up in a bad way. Anyways, yeah. I remember when we did the comp for Dylan, there was an actor. Oh, what's his name? Oh, I think his name's Owen Teague. He was in Bloodlines. He's one of the bullies in It Chapter 1. And like that, if you look that actor up, that's the act. That was the actor I had in my head for Dylan.
Okay.
Yeah, that's him. That was
Yeah.
him. He plays like the jerk bully guy really, really well on Bloodlines. And he's probably a little too old now, so it's probably gonna. If we did do it, it'd probably end up being an unknown or something. But I can answer the Marcus thing. So visually, the Marcus comp was Fassbender.
Oh,
If you look at him, it's Fassbender. But I mean, I don't think we'd get Fassbender for this. So like,
One day.
yeah,
Oh,
I
that
You
think
never know.
the ones that I liked was like I think like Ed Norton or who's the other guy that would be good? Oh, did you guys ever watch Hannibal? The show Hannibal with
Yeah.
not Mads but Hugh Dancy, that other guy. Like that guy, I think would be a good,
Oh.
a cool
Yeah.
guy. Like those are like I know they're kind of obscure actors, but that's the way I like it. I like to
no,
think
that's
realistically. We're not getting Brad
Yeah.
Pitt. We're gonna get the guy you've never heard of.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
those are the ones I think would be cool. Yeah.
Jamie
Love it.
Lannister would be cool for Marcus. I feel.
Yeah, damn, Jamie would be
Yeah.
really good. That's actually great. Yeah, that's a good one.
I love you picked two actors I've actually met, like both him and Fassbender.
You met Fassbender?
I've met Fassbender and I've met the Jamie Lannister guy.
Oh, dude, Fassbender's awesome. I wish he'd do more
He's
stuff.
amazing.
Right?
The Killer was dope. Like I enjoyed the Killer. Like that was fun.
So good.
Just do more of that
Yeah.
stuff, man. He should have been
Yeah.
Batman years ago, right?
Oh
Dude,
yeah.
you could
that
do-
would've-
I'm just
that
glad
would've
we
been
got
cool.
him as Magneto. Like he was
Yeah.
actually
Oh my
like,
gosh.
yes,
That
clutch,
sequence in I think it's is it in First Class where he goes to that bar and takes out the three dudes with the flying knife and everything?
Yep.
Yeah.
That is
Yep.
the
Yeah.
greatest. I think that's the
Yeah.
best moment in all of the X-Men movies. Yeah. So good.
Yep.
Yeah, he's great.
Hard to
He's
argue with
awesome.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So the same person, Howls182, asked another question, and he says, "Was there any other name for Rogue Sun, or was it always going to be that name? What made you go with that name for the character and the series title?" I think you answered the second part before, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. No, he had other names. His first name was Dark Sun. That was what it was going to be for a really long time. And then there was like a copyright issue that we couldn't use it, which I'm glad because I think that had something a little less specific about that. And then I think for a little while we went with Dark Star, and that was like that's a movie from like that's
That's a
Sean.
DC thing too.
And DC.
Yeah. We went.
Yeah.
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 And then we talked about like misspelling it, and I was like, "Can we not do that?" Like, I'd look like I don't know how to spell. And then I went with a name that I really loved, and everybody was like, "Do not do that." Was Nightfire. And they're like, "Dude, that feels like
that's
a
not
bad
bad.
'90s comic," and I was like, "You're probably right about that."
That's
And-
actually that's an Alex Ross character in Kingdom
Is it?
Come. Dick Grayson and Starfire have a kid named
Nightfire?
Nightfire. Like
That's
yeah. So,
that makes
wow.
perfect sense. That's amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
Makes sense.
So, so Alex Ross created. If that makes you feel better, it's not bad because DC
I love the
clearly
idea that it was
accepted
like, what name should I go with? Nightfire or Starwing?
Starwing sounds like a transformer. I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But so we went with Nightfire for a little while, but like I was like, I remember they were like, no, you can't use that. And I was like, can I make him a villain that's like the opposite of him later? And they're like, maybe just stop that. And then Rogue Sun came up because we were just it actually lined up really well with he's a rogue like son,
Yeah.
like he's the one who's gone rogue. And I was like, oh, that Rogue Sun sounds kind of cool. And I found out that Rogue Suns are actually a real thing. Like there's the idea that there are small like there's things in the galaxy where like suns actually don't move, or they move, they're not stationary, I think, or something like that.
Oh.
They're smaller or something. Because if you type in Rogue Sun, you'll actually find like things about it. So I was like, cool, we'll do that. And it just sounded good. And I remember where I was when I remember I was walking down the streets of Coffee Bean with my wife at the time, and we were just like, I was like, what do you think about Rogue Sun? And she was like, yeah, she's like, well, will the Marvel people be mad at you? I was like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think they own that word, you know. So yeah,
It just works.
Great.
Yeah. So the final question is from Dragore, and he says, I think you kind of answered this. Well, obviously we'll go through it again. My question for Ryan is, what was the reason for Owen's armor molting and turning white when they possessed it? Was it only because of the possession, or is it a form that will later return as a power Dylan unlocks?
I think it'll definitely come back. I really like the design of it. And it probably will need a little bit of an upgrade because it got the crap kicked out of it. So yeah, like I definitely think it'll be one of those things that I bring back at some point when we need like, you know, like a battleizer element of it all. But yeah, it was like I said, it was mostly for geography, so you could understand who was fighting whom, and but it was also like it just felt like that was, if they're gonna, like, remember, like when Superman came back from the dead and he came back in the black suit, you know, like there's no reason why he came back in the black suit, but it looked cool. It was nice, and I was like, this is my version of the Superman black suit, you know.
Cool. Love that. Love that.
Yours has more reasoning. What's the name of the form? Do you have one?
What's the name of it?
Yeah.
I think we wrote White Sun in the script.
that's cool.
I don't think we should call it that. We should probably call
it Silver Sun. I don't know. White Sun.
Like white. Like I remember when they were like the White Dragon in Peacemaker, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
Probably don't do that. Let's not do that.
Yeah. No, it's a cool form though.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll come up with Brock will name it. Brock will have a really cool name for it.
Oh hell yeah!
Right here first, folks. Awesome.
Right,
the Nightfire form. There we go. I win.
There you go. Love it. Perfect. That works out. There you go.
That's actually awesome.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, Ryan's been super gracious with our time and with his time. So thank you so much. Before we close here, we want to just remind you guys that Ryan actually did send us some books to give away, and we want to give one away on this episode. So we'll give it. What we'll do is we'll open it for a few days, and then we'll pick a winner in a few days, and we'll do it live. But this is what we're gonna do. So there's the book. It's one of the incentives. I think it's one of the later issues, signed by the co-creator and writer Ryan himself.
Yeah, it's issue 12, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the ratio. Beautiful cover. You're going to give it away to a winner. So this is what you got to do. All you got to do is leave a comment. Let us know who's your favorite rogue villain. And this is what we'll do. If you pick up Infernals, because we'll give it away the day after Infernals comes out. So if you pick up Infernals, we'll put you in for a double chance to win. Okay. All you got to do is just show us a picture of the Infernals book you pick up, and we'll enter you for a double chance to win the book. So yeah, support Ryan, and you have an even better chance of winning a giveaway with books signed by him. And yeah, just thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us today. It's always such a good time. We're so happy that Rogue Sun's not, going anywhere, that there's another concept issue. Yes. There's so much to look forward to. And of course, we're super excited for the Infernals. Thank you again for letting us check it out before it releases. I can't wait to talk about it with everyone else. And anything else you want to add, Ryan?
No, I really appreciate you guys having me come on here. I will say, and I've said this before, it makes me a better writer to talk about this stuff with you guys. When you bring up stuff like what you said about, Dylan being put in the locker, I was like, that's a really good, whenever I can and sometimes having to articulate, what I was intending really helps. Like right now with the script that I'm working on, literally, when this call ends, I'm going to sit down and work on the script. Is like, it's so helpful to focus and talk to people who really, who think about it and like it. And there's a lot of really great stuff that you guys provide that really helps make the book better. And I say that, I mean that you guys make the book better by letting me come on here and discuss this stuff. So I really, really appreciate it. And I will say in the next arc, the only thing I can tease is it probably won't be as unified an arc as the first one, in the sense that it won't have like one major villain that goes from the beginning to the end. Because the goal for the next arc for me is to try to expand the world a little bit. It still has the thematics and it'll have all the stuff, but there's some ideas that I have that I've been wanting to put in for a while. There's some names that have been dropped in the previous issues that will probably make some appearances. And I said named plural, not necessarily singular. So there's some stuff that we're going to set up for that, I'm very excited about doing. So hopefully if you guys, I'm sorry we're taking a few months off. There's some other stuff that's coming up. There's some other massiveverse stuff that's coming into the pipeline that will fill that spot. So it's not like, hell yeah, it won't be that long. I think it hasn't been announced, or it will be announced soon along those lines. Well, I don't want to, I've
Yeah.
probably said too much already, and I'm gonna get in trouble with Michael in like 10 minutes. But that's why we don't want to destroy your wallet where it's like, hey, here's 18 books out. Good luck. You know, we don't want to do that. So, so that'll be exciting, and hopefully as long I will do as Rogue Son as long as you guys will keep reading. So I have plans for it to go.
For sure.
That.
I'm thinking it's time for a reread right now from the start.
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you.
got the trade right there. No, and guys, it's not like Ryan doesn't have another book, right? So if you're waiting for Rogue Son, you want to read more of Ryan's work, Infernals, I'm telling you, it's another supernatural book in many respects, and it's really good. So pick that up next week, guys, and that's going to come out every month, right? Like,
yep, that will be on time too because we're way ahead, so that's good.
Oh, perfect.
Cool.
Well, there you go. So
I
to
just jinxed us, didn't I? I just jinxed us. All of a sudden,
John's like sitting somewhere, and he's like, "This guy just promised something we're not ready to deliver."
John's hand just fell off. He's like, "Oh no!" Yeah.
No, I'm sure it's like I said, we're always happy. I'd rather get a delayed book that's quality than something just released and half-assed. So, and as far as we're concerned, everything from the Massiveverse has been quality. Infernals is incredible, and Michael's also editing that book, which was really cool to see. So, you got a lot of familiar faces there. But yeah, guys, pick up the Infernals #1 coming out next week, Valentine's Day. Check out our giveaway. So leave a comment. We'll get you into the giveaway to win a book signed by Ryan. And we'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen. Stay fiery. Is that what we say? Or Rogue Ignite? I always forget.
Go Rogue.
Right?
Go Rogue.
Yeah.
Rogue.
There you go. Go Rogue. And
I love it.
Put your names for the giveaway. Go Rogue. Yeah.